Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 248, cover dated September 1989. And this is Jim Lee's first professional work on Uncanny X-Men. He is a guest artist on this issue, filling in for Mark Silvestri, in particular because the title has gone to being on sale twice a month for the summer months of June, July and August. So the cover dating here is September, but the issue came out in June of 1989. Now, it's intriguing that he has rocketed to the position where he can be guest artist on Marvel's top-selling title just within 2 years of his becoming a professional penciler artist at Marvel. Now, in this particular month, September 1989, but remember this issue comes out in June, he has another comic on the newsstands and comic book shop racks, and that is Punisher War Journal number 8. You can see that here, and this comes of course after issue 6 and 7, naturally enough, but they're intriguing because they featured the crossover between the Punisher and Wolverine. So clearly Jim Lee's work on that crossover, his work on Wolverine, got the attention of Bob Harris and got him this guest artist penciling gig. But that's not all. This is not actually Jim Lee's first X-Men comics work. He did an art job on the X-Men in the backup story for Classic X-Men, issue number 39, which reprinted issue 133 of Uncanny X-Men, and it was this backup story written by Ann Nocenti and featuring Storm. So I already have a review of this particular backup story on the channel. You can search for that if you're interested, or actually I'll put it in a link in the description for this video. So you can see here at this time period just how skilled Jim Lee has become on War Journal, the title that he launched with Carl Potts just over around 7 or 8 months previously. You can see this is a pretty cool spread here of these two drug dealers blowing away the civilian and the woman and the baby as well. So he really had developed some skills as an artist just 2 years into his career. But this is the issue that I'm focused on for this video review, Uncanny X-Men 248. And you can see on the cover there's an apparently dead Storm killed by Havoc. And so we've got that speech balloon there. Why, Havoc? Why did you kill Storm? Asks Colossus. And I looked up who lettered that. It was Tom Orzechowski doing some cover lettering there as well. So the pencil art by Jim Lee for the cover and the inks by Dan Green. Now let's open this one up to the first page. So we've got a couple of panels here featuring Wolverine. Now remember what I said, it had to have been his work on the Jungle Adventure, the crossover between Punisher and Wolverine, that got Bob Harris's attention. And here we have Wolverine, a focus on Wolverine, apparently opening up the story. The title of the story is The Cradle Will Fall. And the creative team here, Chris Claremont writer, Jim Lee penciler, Dan Green inker, Glynis Oliver colorist, and Tom Orzechowski letterer. Am I reading too much into it to note that we don't have the indication that Jim Lee is a guest penciler? I mean, he is a guest penciler, but in a year's time he would become the permanent penciler on Uncanny X-Men, the replacement for Mark Silvestri, for whom he's simply filling in at this point on Marvel's top-selling title. The narrative captions, his name is Wolverine. He's the best there is at what he does, but it isn't enough as he's shot to pieces there. But turn the page, we get a fantastic double-page spread by Lee featuring a robotic Wolverine. So this was not the real Wolverine, but rather a robot, an android built by Donald Pierce for the Reavers, and here Lady Deathstrike and this trio of cyborgs to take on and test their skills against. So we have here, and I always like the way that Claremont would do this, we would get a roll call of the different characters in a double page spread or a splash page. because that would help new readers identify who these are. And also he gives every single one of them something to say, except for the trio of Reese, Cole and Macon here, which gives us a little insight into their character. So we've got Bonebreaker here, Skullbuster, Pretty Boy. These are Pierce's current bunch of Reavers. And over here, the old trio that he helped come back to full functioning after they were gutted and severely wounded by Wolverine in Uncanny X-Men 133, the very issue that was reprinted in Classic X-Men number 39 that I just showed you. And it seems that an alliance has been made between Donald Pierce, formerly of the Hellfire Club, the Reavers, and Lady Deathstrike. We all have reason to hate the X-Men, he says to Lady Deathstrike, and this X-Man in particular. That's why I banded us together, so that as a whole we may succeed, whereas separate parts we failed, and bring our enemies to the fatal end they so richly deserve. So that is interesting. And the last time that Deathstrike faced Wolverine in continuity was Uncanny X-Men 205, and she says there that because Wolverine has a healing factor, she and her men learned what he can do to their cost. And of course the Reavers want to get even with the X-Men and Wolverine for having been booted from their outback home in issue 229 of the title. And speaking of the outback, Australia, sort of, but in reality only a dream. But this is the Australian Aboriginal dreamtime that Longshot is walking through. And he has a vision of Dazzler, with whom he's been having some romantic entanglements, Rogue too. And this is a really well drawn page here. And imagine being given in a script by Claremont that you have to draw the X-Men playing musical instruments as if they're in an orchestra. And Jim Lee does a really good job on it here. And in particular, I like the body language there on Wolverine, who is playing the violin, but has just stopped. And Storm there playing the flute, and Psylocke looking kind of sinister with her whole face in silhouette, the harp there. So Longshot is dancing with Dazzler, or so it appears, but he asks the question, why are the X-Men playing the music? Why not? She responds, shall we? But then Rogue comes up. Now in issue 247, the previous issue in the series, Rogue went through the Siege Perilous in order to stop a Sentinel, and so she has been lost through the Siege Perilous and won't show up again in the comic until issue 269. But here she is appearing in the Dreamtime for Longshot, and she seems to meld in with Dazzler's body. And now Longshot has 4 arms around him. And then from above comes Ricochet Rita, a character that Longshot first met. She's a stunt woman that he first met in his own miniseries, issue 2 of the miniseries. And she featured throughout that miniseries right to issue 6, the conclusion. And so Longshot seems quite happy to see her. These are all women that he has had romantic entanglements with. And Ricochet Rita seems to say, and the crowd gasps with astonishment and delight as a star of the screen, small and large, not to mention countless backyard fantasies, makes her latest conquest. So what is going on here? We get a nice profile close-up on Rita, and then the transformation of Rita to Spiral. And that is an interesting transformation, because readers know that Spiral is the future version of Ricochet Rita, having made a devil's bargain with Mojo, and now she works for Mojo. So the transformation shocks Longshot, and this is a great DeLuca effect as he somersaults away from Spiral's attack on him. And she says to him, I'm flattered you remember me, when he calls out her name, no less than enraged that you don't remember enough. Because Longshot, when he appeared after his miniseries in X-Men Annual 10, in the middle of the X-Men's Danger Room, a training session, he was amnesiac again, just as he was amnesiac at the beginning of his miniseries, his first appearance in Longshot #1. So he doesn't remember his encounters with Spiral in that miniseries. Then she goads some pathetic little bouncing boy toy, depending on luck and charm, to save you. So she teleports behind him and stabs him with her blades in the back. And this is really macabre and horrific. Pulls his spine out. Let's see how well you prance, the light fandango, without a spine to carry you, she exclaims. And a great worm's eye perspective on Longshot here on the ground, and then Spiral holding his spine aloft above him. Really good work by Jim Lee on this issue, and you can well imagine that he knew that he had a golden opportunity to really show what he could do, to sell his art on this issue for better gigs ahead in the future. And then we get, because it is a Dreamtime scenario, we get this bizarre transformation of Longshot into a version of Mojo, and he attacks Spiral, and she's taken aback and unawares, and so he has her pinned up against the wall and says, and this is great dialogue from Claremont, "Spines are for books, too easily broken or burned. Flexibility's the answer. Don't you agree?" As he pulls apart her mouth in order to make this grin on her face. "Never fails," she says. "Should have known better. No matter what happens, Longshot, you always kill the one you love." And we see Spiral transforming into Ricochet Rita, into Rogue, into Dazzler, all of Longshot's loves. And then we get this tight close-up on his eye and Mojo's visage, or face, in the pupil. "How can that be, my dead, decaying darlings?" he asks. "I'm still here." And we've got Orzechowski's laughter on either side of the panel borders. It's a really great scene. And then we go from interesting transition from a tight close-up on Longshot's eye with the reflection of Mojo to a tight close-up on Storm's eye with the reflection of the fire in her pupil. "That laughter," she says, "so faint it's almost imagination, cold and cruel, beyond all comprehension." "Where am I?" she asks. "The last I remember I lay down on my bed. Somehow I sense, I know, I'm still there. My body at any rate? Is this your doing, Gateway, in the manner of your aboriginal people, to summon my spirit into some dream? For what purpose?" So this is the dream time. "If you brought me here, old man, at least do me the courtesy of an answer." But Gateway never speaks. But he does have a purpose, and the purpose seems to be that she see Longshot, because he's in the dream time too. "What are you looking at?" she says, and then she sees the ghost of Longshot, disembodied, collecting up parts of himself, flesh parts of himself from the ground. "No dream, the foulest nightmare," exclaims Storm. "Why are you tormenting the boy, Gateway? Answer me." But we don't know what Gateway's intentions are. At this point, it's mysterious, but we rather think that his intentions are, for the most part, benevolent. So this is some assistance he's giving Storm by virtue of showing what's happened with Longshot. So there he is, picking up the pieces of himself, searching for myself, of course, he says to Storm, an explanation of what he's doing. "Everyone I touch, everything too, has a history, a sense of where it came from and why it was created, but not me." And that's one of his mutant powers. He's got this look power, but he also has this power of empathy where he can touch an object and tell its history, as he says there. But he can't apply it to himself. "Why don't I have memories, Storm?" he asks. "Why does my life begin the moment I popped into the X-Men's old danger room?" And that is what occurred in X-Men Annual 10. Where did I come from? What's my purpose? These are the questions he's been asking from the very beginning, from the issue 1 of his miniseries. You'll find a review of that on the channel. And Storm responds, "I don't know. Since your life seemed lived entirely for the moment, those are the terms on which we dealt with you. Somehow that seemed natural. But Longshot says, that's it, there's nothing more. I've searched and searched, but this is as much of me as I can find. Is it enough, Storm, for me to be a real person? And she's got no answer to that. And here again, we can see on this page a design device of Jim Lee's to vary the layout, where sometimes he will have one panel with no borders, and it just keeps it interesting and gives us like a focus on Longshot there in this borderless panel, and kind of emphasizes his forlornness and the emptiness of his knowledge of himself as well. So Storm has nothing to say, but then they hug on the cliff's edge overlooking the town where the X-Men are living currently. And Longshot says to Storm by way of farewell, too many holes for a person to be whole. There has to be more of me somewhere. I guess I better go find it. I don't want to leave, Storm. You're my friends, but I can't be your friend till there's an all of me to be. Now, this was supposed to have been in advance of an all-new graphic novel by Ann Nocenti, written by Ann Nocenti and illustrated by Arthur Adams, but it never came to be. Apparently Adams did some work on it, so there's some art that was produced for the graphic novel, but it never came out. And so the very next time that we do see Longshot is in Jim Lee's run on Adjectiveless X-Men after Claremont has left. So Lee brings him back some years later, but in the meantime he disappears from the team, and that's it. He's not seen again for a couple of years' time. And now here we get a change of scene elsewhere and a nice team shot of the Outback era X-Men: Colossus, Psylocke, Storm, Dazzler and Havoc. And who's observing them except for Nanny here and the Orphan Maker. So Nanny has a plan to abduct the X-Men in order to, in her view, help them to escape an impending disaster. So that is what she's up to there, and it's because, as she says, the X-Men are in deadly danger, and whether they want us to or not, we're going to save them. That's a nice shot of the Outback town with the sun rising the next day after the Dreamtime episode, the nighttime Dreamtime episode. So Orphan Maker asks how. We can't even see him on our TVs. Now that's a reference to the fact that back in issue 229, Roma cast a spell that rendered the X-Men invisible from all technological gadgetry, scanning, and so on and so forth, so that the X-Men could capitalize on the world's belief that they died in Dallas during the Fall of the Mutants storyline and the X-Men up against the adversary. And that's why, or how, they've been operating covertly from their Outback base in the couple of years since then in terms of publishing time. So Nanny says that challenges are set before us, that we may rise above them. And then the scene switches to Psylocke taking a dip in an underground pool beneath the town, and Nanny sings a lullaby to her. Rockabye baby, in the treetop, when the wind blows, the cradle will rock. And Nanny's kind of like this perverse version of I'm trying to think of the movie again, Mary Poppins, the Disney film. She's like a perverse version of Mary Poppins. Instead of helping children to grow up, she helps, or she thinks she's helping, by making adults turn into children again. So this gets Psylocke's attention. Intruder. So she snaps to action. She sees it's a robot and thinks, that would explain why my telepathic powers didn't warn me of its presence. And then that song, that lullaby that Nanny's singing, seems to have some effect on Psylocke, so that she sees her old childhood Nanny from England. That's quite enough of that sort of language, young girl, she says, when Psylocke exclaims, what the devil? I declare, are there no standards left anymore in this poor world? And this is a great 3-panel sequence as Psylocke, enchanted by the vision of her childhood Nanny, emerges from the pool and transforms, metamorphosizes in reverse to a teenage version of herself to a child. And that's good work by Lee, showing those different age versions of Psylocke. And the child has regressed not just physically but also mentally, and is charmed by her old nanny. "Time for tea, please," she asks. And then we see the true nanny here. "Of course, the best of everything from my best of girls," she says. "I've the most wonderful surprise for you, Psylocke. Some lovely new clothes. Would you like to try them on?" And she throws some kind of magic dust in Psylocke's eyes, which furthers the charm, and she is enchanted. "Oh yes, please, I'd like that ever so very much." So Psylocke's the first taken down by Nanny, and then the scene switches to outside, and who's going for a morning jog except for Havoc and Dazzler. And this is a great shot of them as well. And I like the detail of how Lee has placed the ends of their feet on the other side of the ground, which gives a sense of them jogging up, running up this hill. And in the dialogue between them, Dazzler's saying Havoc is saying the team isn't exactly in the best of shape. "Unlike us, Alex," responds Dazzler. So he laughs at that. "Maybe we're cursed by God, you and me, Alex. We do seem to be having our share of star-crossed moments lately." So that's in reference to what happened to Dazzler in New York, where she and I'm just trying to remember now for a second. Was she in New York? I think she was with Psylocke when, am I correct about that? I think so. I'm going to say yes. But she escaped with her life because of Rogue's sacrifice. And here Havoc has had a really rough time of it with Madeline Pryor and his affair with Madeline in advance of the events of Inferno, where Madeline transformed into the Goblin Queen and ultimately died as well. So tough times for both. And then she tells him to cheer up. "You can bet we've got the pizzazz and style to handle whatever comes their way." And just at that point, he falls, takes a tumble. I like the sound effects here, Orzechowski's sound effects. Falls down the side of this cliff. But his fall is cushioned. He falls into some desert sand, and Dazzler comes down to investigate. "There's a ship, some kind of ship, I guess," says Havoc, "derelict by the look of it." This is a really great spread in terms of the storytelling on these pages, and I also want to give a shout to Glynis Oliver and the colours. Throughout their time in the outback, Dazzler has been suntanning, and you can see it in the colours where she's got that darker skin tone than Havoc. So into the ship they go, but look at the ominous portal doorway with those kind of like teeth-like extrusions from the edges. You'd want to think twice before going in there. Dazzler gets spooked. She says to Alex, "Come on, no farther." Okay, this sort of reminds me too much of Alien. But Havoc says, "I thought we have the pizzazz and style to handle anything," and then the trap is sprung. And who's there to gloat over capturing Havoc and Dazzler except for Orphan Maker? "It worked, Nanny, just like you said. We clobbered them easy." So he's delighted as he jumps up and down there. And then the scene shifts to the kitchen of the hotel where the X-Men are staying, and Colossus is checking the cupboards, and it's strange because they don't have the amount of supplies they should have. Either some of us are eating like pigs, or, well, the thought he doesn't finish is there's somebody pilfering their supplies. And there is indeed, because from the end of Uncanny X-Men 244, Jubilee, that was her first appearance, tagged along, jumped through Gateway's teleportational portal, which he left in place for her, again indicating that he has his own intentions in relation to the X-Men team. And now she's living covertly in the outback town. But Colossus has been attacked by Psylocke, and he's getting knocked around by her in that big battle suit that she's wearing. So outside now we've got Dazzler and Havoc and Orphan Maker who are about to join the fight, and Colossus thinks here as he's knocked way up into the air by Havoc's plasma blast, Dazzler's photon solid light beam. It certainly packs a wallop. She and Havoc, just like Elizabeth, their voices sound like little children's. So I like the little detail there of Orphan Maker clapping at the success of Dazzler there in making an impact on Colossus. But up in the air, he's grabbed by Storm, who makes a joke. I like it, fancy meeting you here, Peter. But he responds, no time for jokes, Storm. We're under attack. Something has happened to Dazzler, Havoc and Psylocke. But then he's attacked psionically by Psylocke. And Storm resists, but Colossus, under Psylocke's control, remember Psylocke is under Nanny's control, grabs Storm by the throat. I like the effect there, the butterfly effect around his eyes, indicating that he's under telepathic control. Nanny doesn't want you hurt, Storm, he says. This is for your own good. But then she summons the lightning to strike him off her. And she declares, I decide what is for my own good, little brother, and I alone. So great storytelling on these 2 pages too. Jim Lee doing a really, really great job. And now, just like I said, who's there living covertly in the outback town except for Jubilee? And she's wearing various items of the uniforms of the female X-Men, which she's been pilfering from their rooms maybe while they're away on missions. And just as she's getting more food supplies, we can see her here with a string of sausages, she's surprised by Nanny, another mutant. So Nanny says, what's this? Another mutant, a veritable babe for Nanny to gather to her bosom. But Jubilee's not on board. Hey, who are you calling names? And watch it with those arms. So Nanny's got these extendable arms here. Another great DeLuca effect from Jim Lee as Jubilee vaults over Nanny's arms, evading her. And she says, I need that, as she grabs, what's she grabbing there? A jar of something or other, some food. I need that. What a grab, what a gal. Into the bag for it, and down my rabbit hole for me. Bye now. So Nanny sends some of her dust, her magic dust, after her. My hands of glory, she calls them. And Jubilee pulls a fan and wafts it back at Nanny. Ain't coming anywhere near me, thank you very much. And she also throws into the mix her own fireworks and makes her escape down her little rabbit hole as well. And so more great storytelling on this particular page from Lee. Doing well with Claremont's script. Then the scene switches to outside. We've got Storm's perspective on the town as Colossus falls to Earth. And this is another great scene from Lee as well. Great storytelling too. So Nanny's fallen over onto her rocket backpack and she can't get up. She can't ride herself, she says. So she calls out for help, and Peter, her orphan maker, comes to help her. But in the background, we've got Colossus arriving, being blown down through the door by Storm. And Nanny warns Peter, behind you. So he turns around just in time for Colossus to collide with him. That's a great upside down shot of Colossus as well. Really nicely inked by Dan Green too. So as Orphan Maker's knocked, he catches Nanny on the side and she goes spinning. So that's really difficult to draw, and Lee does a really good job of it. And then her slowing down the spin. I feel ill, she says. Have I stopped spinning? Why won't everything else? Oh dear, scanning system's totally disoriented. Storm's the only one still free. This must be her doing. Peter was hit so hard. If he's been hurt, I shall be so very, very cross. So there again, we have that kind of perverse Mary Poppins type dialogue, but a really, really well story told scene by Jim Lee here, working from Claremont's plot. Then back outside, speaking of Storm, to the fight. So Storm using her weather powers to take out Havoc and Dazzler, but then she's grabbed by Psylocke, who's been longer under Nanny's control. And as she's being pulled towards Psylocke, she uses her lightning powers again and senses how another psionic assault is trying to break down her sense of herself, reduce me in my own mind to a childhood state, totally dependent on this Nanny person. She thinks Psylocke too powerful, cannot withstand for long. So she turns the rain on the ground to ice. Everybody slips on that, crashes to the ground. Orphan Maker comes to the fight as well. Storm taking cover behind Havoc there, behind his battle suit. And then Orphan Maker hears a noise, that it's Nanny, that she's in trouble, and he goes after Colossus. But she says to him, fly away, Peter, fly us away home. And let's see what he does. So he flies right up out of the rooftop of the hotel building that the X-Men live in. We given up, Nanny, he asks. I mean, we got 3 of them. Tomorrow's another day, my sweet, she responds. What matters is knowing when to run away, to ensure that you'll live to fight on it and win. But Storm goes after them. And Nanny here says Storm is using her weather powers to try to force us down, but don't be frightened, pet. Nanny has the situation well in hand. And then what's interesting is Storm shows up on Nanny's computer screen. And why is that? So Nanny grabbed some video components from the X-Men's computers. The X-Men, therefore, are no longer invisible to her computers. So she's got a view of Storm being grabbed by this grab arm that emerges from the ship. And so it seems like they're going to make their way away from the town with Storm. But here's Havoc coming to in the battle suit. He gets up, he's all woozy. He's still half under Nanny's psychic control. Storm in danger, he thinks. What am I supposed to do? Obey Nanny? X-Man in trouble. So he's in 2 minds. And his head is in bits. Got to do something, he thinks. That's a great tight 3/4 profile shot of Havoc there. Great spotting of blacks as well. And then he blasts Nanny's ship with a plasma bolt. And Colossus is horrified. But he nails the ship. The ship's going down. But what about Storm? That's the big question. And so last page. So the ship crashes and explodes. And the X-Men arrive on the scene. Havoc wondering, what's he done? Colossus taking the blame as well. The fault is as much mine, he says. But Havoc is inconsolable. Let go of me before I blast you too. Dazzler, cut it out, the pair of you. Stop belly aching about yourselves and look. But Psylocke says, there's no need, Allison. We've found her. And so here's another version of the cover. And it looks like Storm is dead. So what great storytelling, great art, lots of detail, lots of work on the pages by Jim Lee, and really nicely inked too by Dan Green as well in this guest issue of Lee's on the title. And so faithful, this engagement of Lee's with the X-Men in terms of what was coming in the next 3 years and the ascent of his artistic star at Marvel and in the American comics industry. So the letters page here concerns issue 241, which was part of Inferno. And next month, Mark Silvestri returns as the X-Men deal with this issue's stunning shocker. So there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed my review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 248. There's a couple more things I want to show you before closing out the video, and that is obviously this copy. This is the first copy I bought of this issue as a back issue. At the time, my finances were those of a teenager, and so quite constrained, and I had to cut my cloth to my measure. I wasn't able to get a really high quality copy of this issue at the time, so I went with one that was within my budget, let's say, because I needed to have it in order to read the story. But years later, I got a much nicer copy of 248, and you can see it here. Now, it's not a perfect copy. Maybe this is a 9.0. There are some a few color breaking spine ticks here, and that's really it in terms of defects on this. But this one I got signed by Jim Lee when he visited Dublin in 2007. And then the final thing I will show you is my CGC graded copy of the issue. And you can see there it's a 9.8. So for me, this is an important comic. One of the first X-Men back issues I bought, and I bought it by virtue of the fact that it was Jim Lee's first work on the X-Men. As I thought at the time, I have shown you that really his first work on the X-Men was Classic X-Men, was the backup to issue 39, but you can see the different cover dates there. That's September 1989, this came out, or is cover dated November 1989, but his artwork here predates his work on issue 248. So I do hope that you enjoyed my review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 248. Let me know your thoughts on this issue and Jim Lee's coming on board the X-Men in the comment section to the video. And if you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like the video on YouTube. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.